Welcome, everybody. I'm here today to talk to you about taking control of your test environment. First off, I want to start off with a confession. This slide over here with this idyllic plane that you see, that's a trick slide. Let's try this again. I'm here to talk to you about taking control of your test environment. Yes, because much like riding a fire-breathing dragon while brandishing a sword into battle, taking control of your test environment is not a walk in the park. It is hard, it is not easy. It is going to take you on a road filled with obstacles and trials, but because you are standing in this room today, I feel that you are prepared to go on this quest with me. So let's get started. Because every story needs a cast of characters, I'm going to start presenting them to you, starting with the least important one. The nervous storyteller. Hi, everyone. My name is Ioana Serban. I'm a software engineer in test. I work for eBay out of London, but I'm actually Romanian. People keep asking me where I'm from because they can't place my accent. But, today I'm going to sometimes deviate from the story to make maybe a glib remark or tell you a little bit of a personal anecdote. But I'm not the hero of the story today. The hero of the story today is you, and you will be playing this game in the role of the brave and mighty tester. Armed with natural curiosity and a flair for spotting defects, the tester is our base class today. Valuing context above all else, the tester knows there is no such thing as a best practice and views testing as an intellectual activity. Of course, the tester has a special attack. His special attack is rain of questions. The tester can unleash a flow of questions, rendering their opponent paralyzed until they can come up with a suitable answer. The tester's weakness is being asked to automate all the testing, which will sometimes make the tester go into a blind fury. The next character of our story is the bold and reckless developer. Code writer extraordinaire, the developer is the character responsible for implementing the product features. He cares deeply about his craft and can spend hours upon hours debating the correct position of a curly brace with other developers. His special attack works on my machine. When approached by a tester to reproduce a defect, the developer can buy himself some time by showing the tester that the issue is not reproducible on his workstation. His weakness is making software work on other people's machines. The next character, you will have met him probably, is the powerful king product owner. Writer of user stories and master of the backlog, the product owner is king. The product owner is responsible for the product vision. His special attack is just one tiny thing. The product owner can ask the team to sometimes implement a small change to a feature that actually adds a lot of complexity and hence a ton of work to the team. His weakness is being asked to prioritize technical debt. The next character of our story is the feared and formidable ops. Also known as the operations engineer, the DevOps engineer, or sometimes just the IT guy, the ops is able to summon and tear down environments at will. Master of deployments and the dark arts of monitoring, many ops spend time away from the team and do not interact with them on a daily basis. Her special attack is, have you logged a ticket for this? When approached by an engineer to be helped with a problem, if he so chooses, the ops can ask this question, instantly banishing their opponent from their lair. His weakness is breaking changes deployed to production, which will trigger alerts to fly and instantly cast the ops into an incident. The last character of our story is the distant and mysterious other team member. Little is known about these people. Legend has it that they are responsible for some third-party service that the team uses. While often depicted as unskilled savages by the team, it is possible that they are just misunderstood because they live in a faraway land or they have a different approach to software development. Either way, they might hold the key to some knowledge the team is unaware of and that they might need. Now, of course, like any self-respecting RPG, as you're playing the role of the tester, you have some stats. Your stats are strength, agility, intelligence, and charisma, and they all start with a random base level of 10. Now, of course, nobody cares what stats mean at the beginning of a game, because the only time when you care about them is when you need them to get something. So we're going to skip ahead for now and tackle each and every one as we come upon it. So, like any story, there's a once upon a time. So, once upon a time, in a land not so far away, King Product Owner was very excited. He was building a brand new castle, and he had enlisted the help of the best and brightest engineers in the land to complete this task. Now, of course, being a product owner, he'd written some user stories. Construction had already started, and at this point, the feature that needed to be implemented was the castle gate. So he wrote the user story, something in the lines of, as king, I want my castle to have a mighty gate that will allow the friends of the kingdom to come in and keep all the enemies out. And it came with a spec detailing the size and strength of the gate, what wood it's supposed to be made of, what style it's supposed to be, how thick it is, and that it has to keep away, say, 1,000 savages. So, of course, the developers started building the new feature using the best tools available. And one day they declared that the feature was ready to test. So they called upon the brave and mighty tester that came brandishing his test tools. Now, his test tools give the tester plus 20 strength. Think about it. What does that mean that it gives them plus 20 strength? If, you sometimes have X-ray vision. When you're using the development console or the browser console in Chrome or Firebug, you have the ability of seeing stuff that is invisible to the naked eye. Also, using a performance testing tool can give you the strength of 1,000 or maybe even 1,000,000 testers. So, of course, this is going to increase your strength stat. So, being that the feature is ready, the tester comes prepared to test the gate. So on the first day, tester comes to test the gate and finds out there is no gate. He talks to the developers and says, hey, listen, that feature that you just implemented, I can't see it. The developers look, no, I'm sure it should be there. It's definitely there. They check, and they say, oh, you're getting a different version. Something must have gone wrong with the deployment. Come back tomorrow. So the tester comes back the next day, and he finds a moat of crazy, hungry alligators surrounding the castle. There's no way to reach the castle gate. So the tester goes to the development team and says, listen, I can't get to the feature. There's something in the workflow that isn't working that's impeding my progress. I can't actually test a new feature if I can't get to it. The developers say, oh, okay, we broke something around the workflow. We'll get right on fixing that. Come back tomorrow. So the tester comes back the next day, and the castle is on fire. So at this point, the build is broken. There's nothing to test. The whole test environment is down. The tester is upset and asks the developer, what's going on here? Why was this happening? And they say, oh, you see, the build is red. Do you remember Attila, the junior developer? Well, he committed a breaking change, and then he left early because he had an appointment to see the witch doctor today. So we're kind of blocked, and we can't do anything about it. Come back tomorrow. So, of course, at this point, when the feature actually reaches the testers, the feature is late, and you fail the sprint, and King Product Owner is obviously upset. He's tapping his foot right there in the image. And of course, what are you going to do? You're going to start blaming each other. The developers say it's obviously the tester's fault because they didn't finish testing in time, whereas the testers say it's the developer's fault because we weren't given the feature in time to test it. We did the best we could do with the time available, so how is it our fault? Well, even if it's not your fault, no amount of finger pointing or hand waving is going to help at this point. Because the truth is, you've failed, you've not delivered this feature in the appropriate amount of time, and getting upset about it isn't going to help anyone. So of course, it's very tempting to just go and complain to a different tester, saying, oh my God, you won't believe my developers, the stuff I have to deal with every day. And your friend tester is going to give a sympathetic shrug and tell you, I completely understand, it's the same thing at my job. I face the same things that you do. But even that, that might comfort you a little bit, it's still not going to help your issue. Your testing is sometimes blocked, and there's nothing you can do about it. Or is there? Because all of us have to deal with these things. Red builds that will not go green, failed deployments, flaky environments, all of these things that impede our testing. Again, complaining about it is no use to anyone, so what can we do? Given the fact that you have multiple problems, one of the easy ones to tackle is the alligator moat. Namely, at least the features that are supposed to be working until then should be working when you start testing. And for that, you talk to your team and you decide to use automation. Automation is, automation is dumb. it's not going to replace the work that a human being does, but it is particularly good at checking existing functionality is still in place. So of course, using automation, you gain plus 25 agility. By this I mean, because you have an automated check that ensures that everything is working as it used to, you're no longer tied to regression test scripts that you have to execute every deployment. You can spend your time where it's most useful, actually testing and exploring the product. So, of course, now you've chosen automation, and you feel that this is a step in the right direction, but with it comes some new problems. Problem one, the build is red. I'm sorry, did I say problem? I mean quest. First quest for you, the brave and mighty tester, is to find out why the build is red. So you use your intelligence stat and you investigate and you find out that the unit tests are failing. Phew, you say. How many people in the room actually write unit tests for their product? Well, there's a few of us. So for us, maybe we won't sigh with relief, but the rest of the people think, oh, yeah, phew, the unit tests are failing, that's the developer's problem. But, while you might not be able to control the fact that unit tests are failing, again, it is your problem because your testing is being blocked by this. Now, of course, there's a few approaches to do this. Think about Attila, the junior developer. Well, we could punish him. We could, not something bad, we could make him wear a silly hat. I once saw a picture of this guy online wearing a hat that said moron of the day because he had broken the build. Now, maybe singling out your coworkers is not the nicest thing to do. Everybody's entitled to have a bad day sometime, and maybe if you're a junior person, you're going to make more mistakes than other coworkers. It kind of puts you on the spot and breeds a little bit of resentment. So please don't make your coworkers wear a moron of the day hat. A different idea that you could try is the pot of gold. Have, like a money jar where sometimes you put a little bit of money every time you break the build. As an incentive to kind of stop doing that. Now, my psychologist friends, if they were watching this, would be going, tut, 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 because all of these things are forms of punishment. And, punishment is basically, inflicting a punitive action on somebody in order to discourage bad behavior. But punishment, again, isn't effective in the long term, can breed resentment, and is not the most effective way to tackling these things. What psychology teaches us is that positive reinforcement works much better. So what you could do instead of punishing people who are breaking the build is to encourage people to keep the build green. It's like celebrating. Maybe when you reach a milestone, like 100 green builds or 100 days without having a red build, you could even have a counter on the wall that says something like 96 days since the build has been red. This also gives the team bragging rights because every time a different team member is going to walk past, they're going to see that and they're going to go, oh, they haven't broken the build in 100 days. Wow, that's something. And it's kind of just for the same reason that some people love bragging about their test coverage. If it's high, they love bragging about it. If it's low, they don't see anything. But, another approach that you could think about is, well, what if you actually let the developers break the build? Well, that would impact our testing, wouldn't it? Well, what if you could have your cake and eat it too? I mean, some developers are going to argue, I don't want to run the whole suite of tests on my machine. The build server is much faster and much better, and while the tests run, I can focus my energy elsewhere. So I want to commit and then check back later to see how the tests have done. And you can definitely do that. If you're using something like Git, this workflow is going to work really well for you. You have a master branch, which you guarantee is always fine, tests are always passing. This is what gets deployed to the test environment so that you always have the ability to test features without being impeded. And every time you develop a new feature, you open a feature branch, and even if you push to that feature, you can break the build, the castle can be on fire, you can do whatever you want on it, because the testers are not going to be working on that. So as the developer, you watch the feature branch, you get it from red to green, and when you finally fix it, you can merge it back to master. So, of course, you come to your team with these ideas of improvement, and you convince them to try it out, and it works. So you earn plus 10 charisma. Your charisma is your stat that basically shows your standing with your team and other teams in your company. It shows how valued you are as a team member, and it's the same stat that helps you convince people to try out new ideas or basically do what you want. There's a lot of reasons to improve your charisma. So now, finally, you have fixed the build. The build is no longer red, and you can move on to your next quest. So, quest number 2, the build is red again. Find out why. Now, who here has automation in their project? All right, so you know what I'm talking about here. Just when you think you've fixed the problem, everything is fine, the build is green, everything, the tests are running, just then, something else breaks, and you have to invest more time and energy to see what's going on. This is an ongoing issue. So the build is red again. What do? You investigate using your intelligence stat again, and you find out that the UI acceptance tests are failing. Uh-oh. Now, those are definitely under your jurisdiction, so you have to do something about them. So, when you're looking at your tests and how they run, you've got a mess of things. You have some red, some green. Green is passing, red is failing. I'm sorry if there's anybody who's colorblind. I didn't think about that. Hopefully, we'll figure, the next slide is going to help. Because what every, testing framework does, by default, is at least it has the decency to separate the red test from the green test. So you can start off with that. So allegedly, all of the red checks over there should be some problem in your system. And all of the green checks mean the functionality is fine. So you start investigating. But while you're investigating, the developers have made a few more commits. And you look at the test results and you see with horror that sometimes some of the red tests are green again, some of the green are red, and they vary. They're not always the same ones. So what do? You're experiencing flaky checks. So you have to address that somehow. So what you can do at this point is you can basically separate the checks into 3 piles. You have the green ones, those are working, you don't touch them, you don't need to worry about them again. You have the ones that are constantly red, and then you have your flaky pile over there, which you quarantine. Now, for the red checks, they should usually be bugs. You investigate them, and you label them as bugs. Once in a blue moon, something will have changed, like maybe an ID on some web element has changed, so you'll have to update your check so it's in line with the product. But more often than not, if a check is consistently red, it's indicative of a problem in the functionality, so you can label it as bugs. Now, what's really worked for me in the past is separating the bugs in a separate test suite. Think about this. Say, you found you have a couple of bugs and there's 2 failing checks. So, when your check suite runs, you see 2 failures. And you look at them, those are the bugs. But what if you have like 3,000 checks and 90 of them are failing, which has been the case? Sometimes there's an issue that's impacting functionality. Sometimes maybe it's a third-party system that isn't working very well. And that's impacting a lot of the automation that you have in place. Now, of course, you're going to do your due diligence, and you're going to go through the pile once to sort it out. But if you leave them there in the main suite, and you look at them every time, until the underlying issue is fixed, and again, it might not be in your control, or it might not be a priority for your team right at that moment, any other commit that runs these checks, you don't know the result. You'd constantly have to diff the failing checks with the ones that are impacted by the existing bug, and this would be very difficult. If you add the fact that you might still have those flaky ones, you have no way to know what your system is doing in the meanwhile. So what we used to do is go through the tasks that are failing, label each of them with the bug number, and push them into a separate suite. Now, when the bug was closed, what the tester would do is, besides manually validating the bug, they'd look for the bug number in the test suite, find if there were any checks associated with them, rerun them. If everything was green, then they could basically be moved back into the main suite. Not only was this extremely helpful to the testers, but the developers loved it as well. They would run the check when fixing bugs. It's one thing to trust that the developer is going to actually test their fix, but they really liked the added confidence of having a check that proved that their fix was correct. They no longer had to guess, and they kind of had the way to do it faster. So basically, at this point, you have automated your developers. Just like the check, it might not do actual testing, but at least the developer that runs one of these automated checks is better than the developer who just pushes a fix without testing it at all. Now, Of course, we still have those little flaky ones in the corner, and we have to address those. So your next quest number 3, is to investigate the flaky checks. Now, let's look at some of the sources of flakiness. One of them is, maybe it's the check's fault. Maybe the check is not robust enough. Imagine if you're writing automation for a DUI, and you have a dynamic element, and your check goes, click on something, then click on the dynamic element, then do something else. Now, unless you're properly waiting for the dynamic element to become visible, your check might fail. In the same way, if you maybe have an asynchronous operation, and the check just goes, assume that whatever action was supposed to happen was already completed, then go on, your check might sometimes pass and sometimes fail, depending on whether the asynchronous operation was completed successfully before the check ran. Now, usually you can make these checks more robust, usually by implementing weights with polling in them. This will cause a check that is sometimes green and sometimes red to become green all the time, making it more robust. Another source of flakiness is that, well, there might be a real issue with your system, which is exactly what your checks are designed to find. And in this case, you should mark the check as a bug. But what's really useful is, instead of leaving it in this kind of flaky, sometimes green, sometimes red state, is if you can make the flaky check fail consistently. For instance, if it's a concurrency issue in your system, then maybe there's a race condition somewhere that will cause some information to be either present or absent in your interface, according to how many threads are calling the system at that point. So what you can do is, with a few alterations, you can make your check execute the action repeatedly, perhaps on multiple threads. It's like a mini load test designed just to expose this one flaw in functionality. So once you have your check consistently read, you can move it into the bug pile. Now again, developers will thank you, because concurrency issues are hard to debug. When they're used to these kind of things, they look for them. They will actually get the test code running on their machine. They're going to use your check to help pinpoint the issue. They're going to run it and use breakpoints and try to figure out what's going wrong. And this is, of course, going to earn you some more charisma points with your team. Now, of course, there's another possible source of flakiness, which is flakiness that is beyond the team's control. Let's say in this case, you enlist the help of one of your developers. You go on investigating in the system, and you figure out it's a third-party service that is not responding correctly. So what's the solution then? Quest 4. A third-party service is causing flaky behavior. Deal with it. So if you think about your system as a whole, it's really nice, and you like doing a lot of end-to-end testing, and possibly your automated checks that are failing are also kind of going right through the front gate and expecting everything to work. But think about it, what you're supposed to be checking in this point is just the gate, just the functionality around the gate. So what if we could decompose the system into its multiple parts? Maybe one of them is a third party, maybe two of them are, maybe something is a different component, maybe something is a library. And you can use stubbing or mocking to replace those bits, and then you can either test the component independently, or if you have like a mock where you have little hooks in it to get information, you can put the pieces of the puzzle back together and test it like that. Now, this is going to, for one thing, it's going to make your automation more reliable, because it eliminates the dependency for third-party services. It's also going to allow you to do some interesting things. Say you're testing for performance, and your third-party service in QA is pretty slow. Their servers aren't as good as the ones in production, so the response times that you're getting, they're not only not up to par, but you're actually not managing to get enough throughput in your performance test to validate against what you're supposed to be expecting in production. Replacing that third party with a stub or a mock is going to allow you to actually test just the performance of your component and see if that's up to par. Maybe you have some bottlenecks there. It's going to really eliminate the other dependencies and allow you to test for very specific things in a way that doesn't tie you down. But the thing is, doesn't really solve our issue. The underlying issue, remember, the third-party service that is flaky, it's just not responding correctly. So, this is a pain, especially if you're doing exploratory testing. You kind of expect all the bits to be there, right? So, of course, moving on to our next quest, which is quest number 5. Get in touch with the dreaded third-party team. Now, why should you be doing that? Talking to other teams is management's job, isn't it? Well, again, if your testing is impacted, you're as good as any other team member to take this upon yourself. So you shouldn't be scared just because the legends are that the third-party team will bite you. There's really no evidence, and there's no way of knowing until you try. So many times, you can just approach the third-party team and talk to them. Now, it's very, very important to see how you phrase the situation, because if you tell them, my castle is burning, and start waving your hands, they're not going to know what you're talking about. I used to work part of a third-party team, a service that was integrated by other clients. And a lot of the times, the clients would come and say, help me, it doesn't work, or fix it, it's broken, and wouldn't give you much information. You'd ask for timestamps or logs, and they'd just shrug their shoulders and go like, oh, it's broken, make it work. And as much as you'd like to help them, it would be very frustrating, because for one thing, they were kind of wasting my time, and I wasn't able to help them with the information provided. So you shouldn't be wasting anybody's time. And you shouldn't be sending them snippets of your code. God, no. I mean, sometimes, I got sent snippets of code in a programming language that I didn't even know how to read, or using another library that wasn't implemented by my team. That doesn't help. So what you're supposed to do to kind of make this easier is think about what you would like to have in their shoes. What kind of information would you want provided if you were doing their job? One of the things that I found very useful, say like, usually it was a service and I was calling an API that wasn't responding correctly. Instead of describing the problem, in words or a long-winded email that's hard to follow and people just skim, I just use a traffic capture. You'd have a traffic capture, which basically shows the timestamp, all the headers that they put in the response, the exact parameters and body that I called it with, their exact response. This is kind of information that they can use to then check their logs and, solve the problem much faster than if I were to just spend my time screaming at them over the phone. Of course, in this case, we were talking about a flaky issue. So sending a traffic capture of one request might not be enough. Because, say, the issue is reproducible in only 30% of the cases. That's a 70% chance that if they run the same request, they're going to get, like a valid response back. And they're going to say, I can't reproduce this. I don't know what you're talking about. And again, sometimes your third parties, they live in faraway lands and other geographies. The communication is hard. It might take hours and hours for them to respond. So, constantly chatting over email and a continuous back and forth is not going to help anyone. What I did in one of the instances is, instead of sending one request, I had a capture of multiple requests. I use a nifty tool called Charles. And in Charles, there's just a very easy option. You right-click a request that you've captured, and you say, run the request 10 times on 10 threads. And bam, you have 100 requests. Having the 100 requests, you could easily see that about 20 to 30% of them were failing. You could see this the same timestamps, the headers, everything that you needed. So when I sent that to the third-party team, they were kind of forwarding the email around with the attachment and saying, like, I can't reproduce it. No, look in the request. Look, you can clearly see that about 30% of the requests are failing. So within the night, they had kind of debated over it. They had worked out a solution. So by the next day, when I came back, the test environment was working. They had fixed the problem. And I just left at 6 p.m. as every single day, whereas, they continued to work on because they were based in the States. So being very, very precise and very, very polite with your third-party team goes a really long way. Now, the thing that works best, to be honest with you, is beer. If you can have a beer with these people, nothing can replace like actual human interaction. On the reverse issue, I was working with a third-party team, and we depended on them quite heavily. But they'd always be snippy and bug reports and kind of dismissive in emails until they visited our campus. And once they actually saw that we were human beings and we took them out for dinner and beer, all of a sudden they were like, yeah, of course I can help you. Yeah, sure, I'll deploy a new version. Right, just this minute, Jan, I'm going to look in the logs right now. It changes so much. So if you can get in the same room with the people or have a video conference just so you can put a face on that name in the email, that helps so much more than just having a dry conversation. So of course, now you've successfully fixed this. Everything is going fine. You no longer have issues with your third-party service, so you can go on with your testing, right? Wrong. Your deployment has failed. Investigate. Now, again, this is another problem. What are you going to do? You're not the operations team, are you? You might talk with your engineers, and they might know some things, but usually when you tell you the deployment has failed, you're kind of stuck. What are you going to do? Well, possibly one of the things you can do is go and find the wizard, the operations engineer responsible. And with the wizard, you can use your special attack. Use rain of questions on him. Ask him questions like, how does the deployment process work? Where is the monitoring? What are the alerts? How do I get to the logs? What happened yesterday? What went wrong? How did you fix it? The operations engineer, he can't counter with his special, which is asking you to log a ticket, because you don't need anything from him. You just want to know stuff. So they'll usually look at you weird, because you're possibly the only person who's walked into their lair in a very long time asking for stuff like this. So, he might tell you, or he might say something like, listen, I'm in the middle of something right now, but come back tomorrow after lunch, and we can talk about it. This is what I used to do. I used to spend time in the operations engineer's room. I'd feed them candy. I'd ask them how their day went. I'd ask them to show me cool stuff. So you basically find out not only how your deployments work, but how other stuff in the system works. And why I'm really recommending you do this stuff is because the wizard isn't incidental. In operations is kind of the realm of magic scripts that aren't really considered part of the deliverables. They're seldom tested by actual, software testers. So it's pretty amazing when you see somebody pull out this Perl script that was inherited and passed down from generations beyond, copy-paste some crap into it, and say, "Oh, don't question it. This is the way we've always done things." Of course, this is the opportunity for you to question things. And as you build your relationship with these people, the more questions you ask, the better things get. And, for our quest, you find out how your deployment works, and you earn +10 intelligence, because you know new things now, and +5 charisma, because the ops team likes you too. So, finally, at this point, you can go exploring. You fixed your test environment, at least for now. So, you grab your torch of knowledge, and you go exploring around the castle. And you come across this locked door. You've seen this locked door before. You've been here. You've been told no. Like, what's behind it? You don't care. You don't need to know. It's a need-to-know basis. You're just a tester. You don't need to go there. And it might be your product source code. It might be credentials to the database. You don't need to have those. So in the past, you might have asked for the keys to the castle before, but you've always been told that you can't have them. Well, on your next and final quest, ask for the keys to the castle. This is your mission. But what's different this time? Well, what's really different is that you've spent all of this time building up your stats. You have increased intelligence, agility, strength, and charisma. And these are the stats that you're going to pull on when you're actually convincing people to give you stuff. And the key is not ask for all the keys at once. Ask for the first one. You want access to the code. Maybe you're not a coding tester, so why would you need access to the code? So you can answer a million answers. One of them, just off the top of my head, I want access to the code to see what areas of the code will commit impacts so that I can see which areas I should test. Seems reasonable enough. A different reason could be I just want to take a look at the current code because I want to learn. People can't deny you an opportunity for learning, can they? And it's pretty easy. They just add you to Git or Perforce or something. It's really easy, and it's all up to you, and they don't actually have to do anything that takes them more than 2 minutes. So you'll usually get this key. Then you can ask for access to the database. You want the DB credentials. They look at you, and why do you need those? You say, like, relax, relax, I don't want to mess with the database, but think about it. Say I'm entering data in a form, and it might appear on a different screen, but how do I know that it's getting put in the right table in the database? It might be getting put somewhere else, or there might be some other issues, or some of it might not even be visible. How do I know, for instance, that the timestamp is correct, because that's not shown in the UI? And they go, yeah, well, they have a point. So you'll probably get those too. And then you might say, I want access to monitoring. Now, since you've befriended your operations engineers, you're definitely going to get that. But say they say no. They say, no, you don't need access to monitoring. Why do you need access to that? And you go, like, well, during our release process, I want to actually look at the monitoring to see if there's any changes. So yeah, of course the operations engineers do that, but they don't usually do that for the release. They just react on alerts. What if the changes are subtle? As part of my testing, I'd like to see that we've not broken anything and have access to monitoring. They're going to look at you and say, well, that seems pretty reasonable too. So you probably get access to that. Maybe, just maybe, you're going to get deployment rights. I mean, why not? You've asked for all of the other keys to the castle. They're going to look at you strange. You're the test. Wait a minute. Deployment? That is not for you. That is definitely not something you should be doing. And you can say, well, why not? Because say I want to test these changes in a different environment. Maybe I can test them on the dev server, but that has only one instance. But I need to test on the QA server that has 3 instances. Maybe I want to run some special tests. But all of the developers are busy, or the operations engineers, whoever does your deployments. All of them are busy, and I don't want to take up any of their important time spent developing. And they go, well, it's only QA, that's kind of harmless. Why not? Give them rights. So, eventually, just doing this, I got all the keys to the castle in my previous job, but it took me 2.5 years. So, now I've taken this new job at eBay, and it took me 2.5 weeks to get all the keys to the castle. So I'm like, man, my job at eBay is really awesome, isn't it? It's so different than my previous job. The truth is, what's really different is me. Because during all of those years, I've grown as a tester. I now know the answers to why I require these things. I have credibility. When you ask me, when I ask you for something and you say, why do you need it? I have a good answer prepared for that. I can convince you that this does help me make my job better. So basically, with all of these keys, you can open a lot of doors. And every time you see a new locked door, I urge you to ask for the key to it and go beyond. Because what I feel is that the more doors you open, the more you explore, the better you understand the product, the more knowledge you have, the better tester you become. And behind some of those doors, there might be dragons. But I urge you to go exploring anyway. Because if you don't find those dragons, they're just going to lie there sleeping and one day wake up and bite you. Now, of course, with all these keys comes great responsibility. And it's daunting because you might be afraid. You might not know how to wield some of these things. But you don't have to. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Because now, because you've built your relationships up, you have a whole team of people supporting you. So now you can go to your developers and ask them for help, because you're on their good side. You can go to the operations engineers. They already know you. You can talk to the third-party team, and sometimes the third-party team will talk to you. Out of everybody in your team, you'll find sometimes that these people are going to be emailing you for help when they need something, because you treated them like real human beings and were always polite and respectful. And of course, you can talk to your product owner, because he cares that his vision is realized, and that's what all of us want anyway. So, of course, for me, as for little old me, I'm only here speaking at CAST to gain plus 10 charisma. I joke. I like to joke about this thing, but it's a real honor to be here. I've rushed through my presentation a little bit, as sometimes it happens, but I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here, because without all of your support, I would have never been here presenting in front of you. And besides all of this, there are some other very special people I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank the Speakeasy program. If you've not heard about the Speakeasy program, what conference have you been attending? They've been thanked in basically every keynote and every talk. So the Speakeasy program, which you can find at speakingeasy.com, It's a wonderful program founded by Fiona Charles, who's here in the room, and Anne-Marie Charrett, which is, there to encourage diversity in first speakers, and it's been a great, great, great help to me. Once I joined the Speakeasy program, I was paired with a mentor, the wonderful Karsten Fellberg, who has been just an immense help. I'm terrified of public speaking, and if it wouldn't have been for Karsten's help, kind of digging in and helping me realize why I'm afraid of all of these things, I would have never been here today in front of you. And last but not least, I want to thank my team at eBay, the EPD team. If any of you guys watch this, hi guys, I'm on TV. But in all seriousness, I've never felt so supported and so encouraged to learn and grow in my life, and I am just thankful for the opportunity to work with them. Now, I've finished early, but that's no problem for me, because why I'm actually here at CAST and what I'm really after is open season. So I'd like to take some questions from you. If you're too shy or want to talk to me later, you can email me at iserban@ebay.com or tweet me at Ioana says go. I love to talk about testing and these things with anybody who wants to. Thank you.
Questions?
All right, we're 161. 188, 57, 104. Anybody else? All right, we'll start with 161.
I'll start off saying I don't have to stand on a chair this time. So I liked your presentation a lot, and at my work, I befriended the developer that everyone in the whole entire company has a problem with because of the way he comes at people. But what I was saying was, when I didn't know that he was like that, and once I met him, it was very helpful. But my question is, for getting keys to the castle, if you keep asking for them, and they say that you don't need them, do you have any response on what to do after you keep asking?
Well, one of the things I like doing nowadays is pairing. I didn't initially get, for instance, access to logs. What I constantly do is when I knew one of the developers was investigating something, I was going, hey, let me watch you. And he'd be like, no, I don't want you. Come on, I want to learn. And you can just kind of weasel in there and, investigate together. Or, we want to see something in the database, so you pester them and say, listen, I really need to do this. Would you do a pair testing session with me? And they might like the pair testing, but they might also, gain confidence that you know what you're doing, you know how to handle these things, that you could do these things too, the way you behave, the way your whole demeanor, the way that they see that you're willing to learn. They'll usually give you the keys to the castle.
And if they say that they don't have time because they're busy developing something else to have a session with you?
Well, you can tell them that, if something isn't tested to the degree where you're confident and it's not ready. So they can't develop more things if, the features that they've already worked on aren't properly tested and you don't have enough confidence. And, just bring into question the fact that you're a member of the team that is just important as they are, and they should be able to help you out.
Gotcha.
I had a follow-up on the same thread. I think that works, what you said as far as pairing and just demonstrating your skills, because I had a similar situation in which a developer would often have to go into the system and clear cache for an issue that was recurring. And finally, he just gave me the key. And he said, don't tell anybody. So the other part of it is to find somebody who, once they see that you have that skill and they can trust you, and it's building charisma, and sometimes you just have to go to another person who will work with you.
Same thread?
Yeah, I think in my experience, someone mentioned it earlier today, is find that one developer who wants to work with you. And it may not be initially the bug that you're having a problem with. It may be another situation, but if you find the one developer who will want to pair, who will want to get better, who will want to make their code higher quality, and build your reputation with them, you'll find very quickly that your reputation spreads in that team, because if you make their life easier, then you get much more welcome when you go back to the development team asking a second question.
That is perfectly true, and I'd like to add what I've been talking about, the automated checks that made the developer's life easier. They appreciate that. So like the more you help them, because like, I used to go around my team, and I think I was the only person who did this. Is I would ask, can I help you with anything? And they sometimes need like some bug tested or something else. They sometimes need an opinion. Sometimes they'd use me as a rubber duck. You know, the rubber duck, like the thing that you talk to hash out an idea, something like that. It used to help that I used to smoke and go downstairs and smoke with a couple of the developers, which is exactly when they kind of discuss some things. So all of these things, kind of build your credibility with them so that they will want to help you because you've been helping them all along. Why would they say no?
Same thread?
One of the suggestions I have is usually in situations like these, management plays a crucial role in cultivating the right culture in the team about where the, let's say, testers and developers should be, how they can mingle, the level to which each of them can interact with each other. Although it is not purely up to the management is, if they're pretty understanding and if these concerns are addressed to them, they can be pretty crucial in bringing about these changes or acting as mediators in order for, let's say, developers to provide the keys to the testers to the castle. One of the ways by which that happens is I've seen teams where we have retrospective meetings across releases or sprints where people address some concerns, things to do, things not to do, things that can be improved. And once, let's say, the team raises this concern that not everybody has keys, but we do need the keys, then things that we need to do to improve for the next sprint or next release, you can make a note as saying that, yes, we do want to provide keys to all the members of the team. And then in the next retrospective, you can look back at that point and then see if that has been addressed and if that is something that you want to cultivate going forward. If it has not been addressed, probably you should raise the priority of that issue, saying that it's not been addressed, we raised it before, and we still need to address it, and so we need to make sure that that needs to happen this release. So that's one route that I could think of.
I love the idea of having a retrospective. I think that's brilliant. But also, you said that management is key. However, like right now, I have a really good manager. He's actually suggested that I do a pre-prep session with the product owners just so I can groom the stories beforehand. That's my manager suggesting this, not me. So that's amazing. But even if your manager maybe doesn't understand testing fully, that shouldn't hold you back. Because as I've talked in this talk, it's just a matter of you approaching the right people. And you can do that without, guidance from the manager. If you have their support, that's great. But sometimes a manager that just trusts you to do what you do best, that's enough. And you can take matters into your own hands. Of course, in a positive way. I don't mean killing anybody.
Okay.
New thread? What do we got?
104.
104. Could you stand up for me?
So one of the things that I've been working with is I'm interested in getting keys like access to the code. And my credibility is okay, but the credibility of some of the other members on my team is they're asking for code for maybe to say, we want to check.
Could you speak a bit more into
we
the
want to we want to, check to make sure that nothing snuck by on us, and the way that they're wording things is kind of maybe not building credibility. And so I was wondering if anyone had, experienced that, like experienced issues with maybe you've got the credibility, but the people around you aren't building the credibility.
So is this the other testers when you say the people around you? Yeah. Well, I saw your talk, and the thing that I really liked about it was when you said you volunteered to be the guinea pig. You could try it out. Then you could expand to maybe one other member if they don't screw up. And there's really not much you can screw up if you're not committing. At first, just get read access. It's going to make them feel a bit more comfortable. So you could test it out and see what's happening. You just offer to be the guinea pig, then expand, and eventually you might get the whole team on board. You might not. Some testers aren't interested in seeing the code, and I have to say that that's their choice, and that doesn't necessarily mean that their work isn't effective. I personally like having the option to see the code at least.
Same thread?
New thread. Oh, go ahead.
So just to follow up on what you said there about how some testers don't want to see the code, what would you say to those testers that don't want to have that sort of access, even if, like you say, you don't want commit access, you just want read access so you can see what's going on, see the comments that are going in there as well, because sometimes things go into the comments that say, this is what I'm affecting, that don't often make it into like the release notes or the dev tasks in Jira or things like that. So what would you say to those testers that don't want to have that sort of access?
I'd say that they should at least try it for a while. I think there's no harm in trying a new test approach. Maybe you read the code for a bit and see if it's useful to you. It might not be. Maybe you're not at a point where you have the technical understanding to find it useful. Even if you're an automation engineer, if you're a Java engineer and somebody's developing in Scala, it might be daunting. You might need additional steps. But I think it's definitely worth having a shot at it. And if you have another tester that is more comfortable, then that would be awesome, because then you can, reach out to them for guidance. And I'm really big on, helping some team members get into parts that they might not be as interested in. I used to do the same thing for performance testing. I was the only person doing performance testing. Nobody else cared about it. And I did my best to rope the team in, and eventually I drove interest so that everybody else was doing it as well.
Same thread.
Another thing you might try if you can't, with respect to the testers like that, or maybe it works for the developers, like she said earlier, if you just model behavior and you show it to be effective, maybe you can get, like she said, one other person, and you show, we're finding a lot of bugs here, or we're finding good bugs here, maybe people will notice that. And then you don't have to worry so much about trying to be, maybe your preferred method of persuasion isn't direct verbal engagement. Maybe they see you as a threat. They see you as more. They feel too senior to listen to your words. But if you can show results, maybe that's the way to go. That might be better, or it might be worse. I think it probably depends on the individual personal relationships in a lot of those cases.
I definitely wanted to second that suggestion, because it works in teams that I've encountered. In my company, or at least the immediate teams that sit near me, a lot of developers, the testers, they actually fix bugs. And because of that, they have a good understanding of the system. So they show that they are able to understand the code and they're able to fix it. And eventually the other testers in the team, they would, it's human nature to feel that, okay, that tester is able to understand the product better and he's able to better interact with the developer, and it sort of leaves me out. And so I would also want to give a shot at trying to fix the bug. And so the culture sort of spreads out. And that's something that I've actually seen it working. So yeah, I just want to add that.
That's perfectly true. I've had an inside developer tell some other colleagues of mine, why don't you do what she does? That sometimes works.
So just in the same thread, have an experience where I was the person who was reluctant to get into the code base, mainly because I was getting sucked into doing kind of management tasks and looking after the team, and I genuinely didn't have time to do that. And when I eventually did make the time to get the access to code base, go and look at it, it really did just make things much more clearer, and I really started to understand what my other testing colleagues were doing and what they were telling me, and it made much more sense. So just to echo you guys about, it is the results. Whenever you actually go convince someone to go do it and they see the results, they will be completely won over. It will work.
Just a historical note of caution. There is an actual purpose to black box. Sometimes we might not want to look at code, which is different from not being allowed to have access to it. New thread 57.
Okay, so on one of the slides, you talked about having multiple environments, multiple versions of the environment available. So one that the developers could break and one that's always good to go. So in my situation, we do have multiple environments, but we don't have that redundancy where there is a duplicate that can be broken. So what other advice or suggestions do you have to protect your environment?
Well, I don't know. I mean, would it be useful? First, ask the team, like, would they appreciate something like that? Because if they would, it's just a matter of provisioning something else and deploying a branch, like a feature branch there, I guess. So I guess the only thing is to consult with the team and see, is this something you want, and give it a try. Just as you have multiple environments, there's no harm in adding another one if there's budget for it. Oh, getting the budget.
The budget is part of the problem. Like, I have one environment where we won't build an Exadata on that environment because we keep saying we're going to get rid of that technology anyway. And so that's just a blown area where you can only do limited things for testing. So budget is probably always a problem.
That's a problem. One thing I once did is I took my more senior coworker and I said, listen, I need you in on this. And then we went into our manager's room and we said, hi, the only thing we want for Christmas is a new build server, because ours sucks. And we did get one, but it was just because we strongly believed that this is something we needed. We made the case for it, and it's sometimes very hard to say no. So if the whole team agrees that this is a good idea, you'll probably make do. It's not, 1,000 servers.
Same thread?
One way you can get around that thing with budget especially is look at things like virtual machines, things that you can fire up and destroy once they're done. And the other thing there is it's not just the different environments, it's also the different code branches as well. You deploy one branch that is your new feature branch to an environment, to another environment, to another environment, but you always have that stable baseline master branch that isn't changed. It's exactly what you released the last time you released. There's no change at all to it. So things like that help with the overall thing. So having a branching and merging strategy, your devs may already have one, so it might pay to see if they do. But also virtual machines, virtual environments are an excellent way around the budget problem.
New thread 131.
So you've been out drinking and smoking with these developers or IT people, and they still don't want to help you. How could you elaborate a bit on how you would process or go forward with those people?
I think the thing that really changed stuff is when you really manifest interest in their work and not that just to get something. So, like real honest interest in something that you're maybe not touching. I'd go and ask my operations engineers what they were working on, not to get something out of them, just, hey, how's it going? What's that you've got open there? Is it an incident? We'd build a relationship that, I showed them that I valued what they did professionally, and it wasn't one of those things where they kept waiting for the other shoe to drop for me to ask for something. But, some people just won't like you. They won't take a shining to you. They won't want to help you. You can work around them. Ideally, you get along with everybody, but it's not the truth. You just have to pull on those people who are willing to help you. And, probably because you're here, I imagine that lots of people say that you're the best tester they've ever worked with. And those are the people that you want helping you.
New thread 180, was it 8?
Hi, we met on, I think, Monday or Tuesday's morning lunch or breakfast, but I was going to pose the same question I asked you earlier. we're having an initiative to make our QA environments more production-like with production-like data. But the problem that we're running into there is that because we have sensitive information that we need to, I guess, comply with certain, bodies like HIPAA or like CJIS compliant.
Mic, sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, we have sensitive data that we have in our production environment that we want to mirror on our QA environment. So because of those limitations, only certain people would have access to that information just because of regulations and whatnot. So I guess my question to you is, how do you get around that, like any other strategies besides, like, I don't know, maybe sanitizing the data before we go into QA, or there's any other approaches you can recommend for getting access to that data?
I feel you have a better grasp of this than I do. I think you already know these answers. There's probably a few things you can do. You're the best judge of this, and you can consult with your team. One of them is definitely sanitizing the data if you want that exact data, removing the stuff that is confidential. You could build something that generates data that mimics production. I don't know to what degree that is possible for you. Again, consult with your team. You could get some of the people who actually have access to that data to work on the sanitization bit so that the rest of the team would never see the private information. I don't know your project, but I feel that you're on the right track, and you look like a go-getter. You approached me in the first day that you met me, and you're asking me again. So just ask these questions to people in your team, to engineers, to architects, to everybody there who has a bit more technical understanding of what's going on there, to the legal team who might have some insight about what can go, what goes, what doesn't go. Maybe find out what the approval to get access to that data is. Maybe you can get access as well and see for yourself. Just keep pushing and keep asking questions, and you will get your answer eventually.
New thread 145.
Sorry. So one of the things you mentioned in there was when you were talking to third-party software vendors about giving them the information that they need to know to get the fix for you. Have you ever thought about having your testers sit with like your call center staff, your help desk staff, people that have to on a daily basis ask those questions to get information from the user in order to solve the user's problems? To use that sort of cross-training?
So you mean like having like a support team?
No, so like sitting with the support team for a little bit to see what sort of questions they ask to get the information out of the user about their issues, so that you then know what sort of information do I need to provide to the third-party vendor, given that it's sort of the reverse situation there.
That sounds very interesting. I've never tried that. I think it might be a really good approach.
Okay, from Twitter. What do you do when you realize that you're testing the test environment harder than it would get stressed in production?
Wow. You can always hope that maybe you'll make it big one day and have millions of users, I guess. So having a test environment that runs at better capacity than your actual production traffic, that's good. That's what you want. In case, like, maybe you do like a promo campaign one day and the traffic spikes, if you're ready for that, that's fine. That's not an issue. What the issue is when you're kind of treading the line, when you're kind of at capacity and you're really not prepared for an increase. And even if you are, say you have something elastic, you might not be prepared for a spike. So having like bigger and better test environment, than you actually need is, generally not a problem. It might be a cost problem if you're paying more for that hardware. But in case, there's nobody actually complaining about it, I'd say it's not an issue.
Also from Twitter, do you use any particular test coverage tools to help, to help organize and demonstrate to management what you're finding with all these keys?
Well, test coverage tools. I don't know. For one thing, there's the automation that I constantly go back to. I keep mind maps from when I've tested certain features. I go back to them. I don't generally share them outside of the team. There's nobody who holds me accountable or asks for coverage. I'm lucky in that respect. People trust that I'm doing my job. And if I say that something has been tested to my satisfaction, it actually has been tested. So, other than that, I can't say that I do much of this. If I actually found any need to do this, I'd look into other things. There's a few people who've blogged about such things, so I think there's plenty of resources if you're interested.
Same thread?
So following up for that, you got all these tools and all these keys and stuff that you use in a certain way. Do you talk with the rest of your test team about the ways they use it, given that they may be using them in slightly different ways, have slightly different angles that they approach it from? Do you get together for learning sessions and things like that?
Man, I wish I had a test team. Right now, I'm the only tester on my project. I would love to have somebody to talk to about what their approach is. I sometimes have we have a bi-weekly meeting, every fortnight we have a meeting with the other testers, but we keep it more kind of high level because my keys to my castle are not your keys to your castle. I don't actually understand the nitty-gritty. We keep it more to how the organization is going, what kind of change we'd like to do, what kind of trainings we want to see, stuff like that. We talk, we sometimes complain, we tell war stories, but sadly, we don't do any of these things because these are kind of highly specific to your project and you kind of need the domain knowledge.
New thread.
Yeah, so thank you again for doing this talk. You actually started off saying that you were not important, but you are very important in this story. Can you tell us about your background and how you learned to do the type of testing you do?
Okay. For the story itself, it's not, but if you're interested, I studied computer science in school. And in my fourth year, I was supposed to graduate. I was burned out and upset and did not like what I was doing. I figured, what other skills do I have? I speak English pretty well. I might become a translator or something. I was kind of digging what other skills do I have because I really don't want to have anything more to do with this thing. So I was kind of depressed and sitting on my hands and complaining to my best friend. And she was like, so you're not going to finish your degree this year, obviously, because you have a couple of retakes, and you're complaining that you hate living in the dorms and you hate your life. Why don't you just get a job? Get a job, see if you like it, and move out, run someplace nice, move in with me, she told me. She was my best friend. So that's exactly what I did. I decided to go get a job, and because I was kind of disenchanted with what I'd seen about, software from college, I saw this thing, it was like a software engineering test, and I thought, testing, this is interesting. I've never heard of this thing before. The extent that testing was covered to in my college was one lab of one optional course that for half of the 2-hour time slot, that's 1 hour, covered how to write unit tests with JUnit. And that was all we learned about testing. So, nothing really. So I figured, I might give this a shot. It looks interesting. It seemed pretty techy. So I applied to get a job at Adobe. I also applied to a few different jobs and went to some interviews, but that's the job that worked out. And when I went there, I realized that, the people working in the industry were very, very different from the people I saw in my college. In college, nobody was helping each other. Everybody was all about their grades and their projects. They wouldn't do any sharing of knowledge, nothing like that. They wouldn't talk to you unless they really trusted you, and then they'd kind of be vague about how they'd approach solutions to the homework. And when I went to my actual job, I found talkative engineers that were nice to you, that wanted stuff to go well, that liked sharing knowledge, that wanted to help you, to some extent at least. And I felt pretty good about myself. So I came there and I was like, okay, so I'm a software engineer in test. What is this magical thing? Well, I don't know. So there was this guy who was handing off the project to me, but he was migrating to a development role. So he couldn't mentor me much because his words, not mine. He described himself as a pretty crappy tester. That's why he was moving to development. He didn't feel that he was doing a good job. So I had basically kind of nobody to learn from, which turned out to work to my advantage because there was nobody who told me what I was supposed to do. So I didn't know there were any limits. So I just kept asking questions and asking for stuff and wanting to know things because I have a curious nature. And pestering the developers and pestering the operations engineers and pestering the management and talking to as many people as I could. And it didn't start out like that, of course. But I started out shy and without a lot of confidence. But as people were telling me that I was doing a good job, I wanted more. So I just kept learning, and then it's one fateful day I discovered the software testing community. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. There are other people like me. There were other people in the company, but I didn't get to talk to them that much, and they were all kind of from the same background as I was. So that's not a lot of diversity. And then I figured, oh, there's people all over the world who are doing this, and they're all on this thing called Twitter. Wasn't Twitter to, follow, Taylor Swift or something? That's what I thought at the point. So what changed for me is when I went basically 2014 at Let's Test, when I met like a lot of the lovely people sitting here today. And that's basically what changed my life. I got the new job at eBay because I met my ex-manager there. And now I'm working for a company that encourages me to do this crazy stuff like speak at conferences and that trusts me to get all the keys of the castle in 2.5 weeks. So basically, I was very, very, very lucky. But I have to say that it wasn't only luck, but it was also all the wonderful, amazing people that have surrounded me. And I must have done something right to attract them, so I might have a little bit of credit there. So I'd like to thank all of them again.
So from one of those people that you're referring to on Twitter, Anne-Marie Charette, she asks you, what were your reservations about speaking? You mentioned earlier you had some.
Oh my God, all of the reservations. I thought the sky would, split and I'd be struck down by lightning if I stood here in front of you today. I thought I would melt beneath these lights. I thought that I would freeze and not be able to say anything for a whole hour. I was so afraid, but one of the reasons that the speakeasy program really resonated with me is that I've always felt that one of the reasons why I was so apprehensive to speak is that whenever I saw people speaking about software, it didn't really look like me. I'm a 5-foot-tall girl with pigtails. People card me in bars. I couldn't relate, and just wasn't a lot of women. There weren't a lot of women at events and conferences, and I didn't have any women role models in my previous job either. So I figured, it's not for me. And then I saw like the speakeasy program. And I figured, look, these people are actually willing to help me, and they're kind of passionate about this cause. And I feel quite strongly that there should be more women speakers. And as I was telling Fiona Charles, I know one way that I can increase the number of female speakers by 1. And as we've talked today, leading by example is something that I'm really big on. So I figured I'm going to take the plunge, go out there, and if I get struck by lightning, if you can't be a good example, at least be a horrible warning.
Funny you should mention Fiona.
I wanted to add something to your story about luck. Luck's what you make it, and probably the most important thing, if you're not a planner and you're not terribly goal-oriented and so on, is seizing opportunities, just jumping for something. This looks neat, this looks interesting, this looks like something I want to do, I'm going to jump. And you've done that.
Thank you. I read this really funny book by Amy Poehler. It's called Yes, Please. And she talks about the rules of improv in there. And one of them is like, in an improv scene, you always say yes and. So if I say like, well, we're on a mountain, and you're in the scene with me, you don't say, no, we're not on a mountain, we're actually by the seaside. You go with what I'm doing and you add to it. And that's what I've always tried. Whenever I present an opportunity, I'd say yes and. I try to seize that opportunity and add to it. And in this case, maybe, because the software testing community has been so nice to me, maybe give a little bit back.
New thread?
Hey there. I think like most people in the room, I really enjoyed the RPG analogies for all the people in our space. Can I get like a round of applause for that? That was pretty cool. I thought that was a really insightful way to make a bunch of nerds hop on board with what you were talking about. I had a thought as you were going through like your cast of characters, where someone who's really important to me as a QA tester is my customer or customers. So I had a thought about who they would be in your RPG role, and I either had the pie in the sky princess who is, casting her favor down upon certain members of your team, or the troll who lives under the bridge, who only comes out when someone tries to break the bridge or is, being rowdy. Just wanted your input on that, see if any of those customer roles make sense within your architecture of RPGs up there.
I think that is awesome, and I think you've got an idea for a talk right there. You should do it.
What?
I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
I think that's time.
Yeah, that's it. So, Ioana, thank you so much. Thank you all for getting involved in a very lively conversation.
Thank you, everybody. You've been amazing.